policymakers' war on what they call dysfunctional markets will always fail. What's dysfunctional is the belief that you can battle Mother Nature and win. And perhaps the most idiotic, dysfunctional notion of all policy manipulation comes from the global warming enthusiasts who believe that they can manipulate both Mother Nature and markets and come out ahead. Now, President Obama continues trying to impose cap and trade through executive fiat, even though cap and trade legislation failed in Congress. Last week, the Environmental Protection Agency came out with new global warming restrictions, ironically, just before the current snowstorm blasted its way through the Northeast. The question is, will they stand the laugh test? And here to score it for us, John Fund of the Wall Street Journal and author of Red Hot Lies, Chris Horner of the Competitive Enterprise Institute. John, I want to go to you first. Talk about bad timing. The EPA announces tough new global warming regs on Thursday, and on Sunday morning, we get the cold winter blast, not to mention what has been happening overseas in England and all the rest of Europe. I mean, the timing is just awful for these guys.
The heavenly forces, I think, are conspiring against them. Look, we had Senator Menendez come out as well, talking about Arctic ice. I think all of this just shows that the politicians are overreacting. And they're also panicking because now that Congress has moved in a much more conservative direction because of the elections, we are going to see a dramatic resistance to any kind of EPA regulations over there.
By the way, Chris, the letter that John was referring to from Senator Menendez was a letter that he wrote to Santa Claus, which said, in part, I am worried about your safety and your ability to deliver billions of Christmas gifts if the ice cap on the North Pole no longer stays frozen all year long. So these global warming enthusiasts are continuing to stick to their message that, in fact, the Arctic ice is melting, and that's what's causing global warming, even though we have these cold blasts from time to time.
Right, David. They stick to their message except when they don't. And that when they don't is during the 3 now in a row severe winters in which we're now hearing voices throwing all of the dozen years of claims on which they've been dining out and advancing policies, pretending to gently minister to the climate by organizing society or ministering to the economy. Now, everything they've been saying, they're acknowledging was now wrong. It's, in fact, cooling is what we should expect from warming. If you go through the docket of those EPA regulations that are popping on January 2nd, you'll see that it's not premised or grounded in more severe, colder winters. It's premised in ever-increasing temperatures, disappearing sea ice, and so on.
Although, Chris,
so
let me stop you right there. Hold on a second, Chris. Chris, hold on. The New York Times over the weekend came out with this op-ed, and they were claiming they were sticking with their global warming thing, saying that despite these wintry blasts that we're getting overseas and here in New York, there is still this overall warming trend. Is that true or not?
Well, it takes a few assumptions. You have to believe it's okay that NASA has gone in and made older years colder and more recent years warmer to create a warming trend. But even if you accept that, the trend stopped. They say the 10 warmest years were in the last decade, or 7 of the 10 warmest years. Well, 7 of the 10 highest years for housing prices were in the last decade. I suppose they're saying that those have been going up too. That's a way of disguising or not telling you that temperatures actually have been dropping. So now today in the New York Times, they said warming means cooling. Warming means everything. In other words, they're willing to, speaking of adaptation, they're willing to adapt their arguments to advance the agenda by saying whatever happens, like any millenarian or doomsday cult, whatever happens, when the spaceship doesn't arrive, they rush inside, recalculate their figures, come out waving a piece of paper saying, don't worry, do not fear, we're on track for Armageddon. Yeah. That's just what they're doing with today's piece, claiming warming is cooling.
But John Fund, no matter how they try to spin this, and I read this piece in the New York Times, bundle up its global warming, it's quite a bank shot to get to their position. But the bottom line is the people don't believe it. The people see these signs. They see what's happening in the Northeast. The president is going to have a very tough time politically selling this message that global warming is still here, right?
David, marketing experts tell us that when people change their brand, it tells something about the product. And when a few years ago they quietly moved without any explanation from describing the problem as global warming to climate change, that was telling us something. It was telling us that the evidence that the globe was warming was not coming in, as Chris mentioned, and they had to move to climate change. So now the great thing about climate change is you can ascribe any weather pattern to it because it doesn't matter whether it's getting warmer or colder, it's just everything's becoming more turbulent and unpredictable.
But politically, John, is it going to be feasible for the president to move forward forward with these EPA regulations and restrictions despite what people are seeing at their weather reports?
The best guesses are that the courts are going to look at what the EPA is doing, and even though it will take a long time, probably into the term of the next president, they will ultimately strike this down as an arbitrary and capricious violation of the Constitution.
Well, Chris, we got to remember the EPA also is the one that came out with this ruling that carbon dioxide was a pollutant alongside with all the other man-made pollutants, when in fact there's more carbon dioxide comes out of the back end of a cow than it does out of a car.
Well, and water vapor is the dominant greenhouse gas, and EPA could and might regulate water vapor as a pollutant under this theory, under a 5-4 Supreme Court opinion, and we know how the left feels about 5-4 opinions since 2000, illegitimate supposedly. They have said that you can regulate anything, so EPA is trying to regulate anything. The important twist or possible tweak on what John's saying, the other scenario is the burden is now on us as a matter of law. We have to prove EPA is, as John accurately said, arbitrary and capricious. I believe we will. They're highly vulnerable. The science is obviously junk, but it's no longer settled quite clearly. Read the New York Times. But the politicians, the House should move very soon to veto the rules that popped January 2nd. They have 60 days to do so. Then it will be up to the Senate and how well you can educate politically to leave the burden of proof on the left to keep these things in place. Because remember, it is a changed dynamic now. They don't have to pass legislation. We have to undo it through congressional action. And I suggest we should. Don't beg deals. Don't delay it to beg a deal. Just say the Clean Air Act as written was not intended to cover human exhalation and water vapor as a pollutant. And let's end this. Don't delay it to beg a deal.
All right, John and Chris, stay with us. We want to welcome our panel of experts. We have Democratic strategist Julie Roginski, conservative columnist Jedediah Bila, and Daily News online columnist S.E. Cupp. Well, S.E., is this something that we will have to wait if there's another administration in, if a Republican president comes in, a Republican Senate, then it will all go back to the way it was?
Well, yeah, I think the only thing that's settled when it comes to this kind of global warming stuff is that the science is unsettled, and politics, unfortunately, is not at a place where it can deal with this. The ultimate loser here is science. Liberals have allowed their liberal ideology to corrupt the science, so people don't really trust it anymore. Is the Arctic ice actually melting, or has it grown, like a recent study just suggests?
And Julie, do you accept the notion that carbon dioxide is a pollutant that should be placed alongside all other man-made pollutants?
Hey, listen, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know, but I do accept the following notion. First of all, I wonder why we never have these discussions in the warmest days of August. But secondly, this is indisputable. The Arctic Circle is melting. That's indisputable science.
Depends which ice block you're talking about.
The snows of Kilimanjaro, which Hemingway wrote so eloquently about, are no longer there. It is getting warmer. Scientists have shown it.
Hold on a second. Chris has looked into more of this than anybody here. Chris, what about those facts?
Yeah, the ice mass, the glacier on top of Mount Kilimanjaro has been melting for more than a century thanks to local deforestation. Glaciers respond to local activity, but you guys seize on charismatic megafauna like polar bears or iconic ice masses, which have a very limited repertoire, by the way. They do advance and they do shrink, as proof that man is the agent of doom. In fact, it is not settled. The Arctic Circle will remain what the Arctic Circle is, but the Arctic ice mass has recovered. You're dining out on a 2007 unusually warm year. Why doesn't an unusually cool year prove global?
The point is, Jedediah, is that the science is unsettled here. And should we be making policy that's going to affect hundreds, thousands of businesses across the United States, billions of dollars, and maybe send our energy prices up even more than they've already gone?
We absolutely shouldn't be, and I think President Obama is going to try to push some of that stuff through because he has shifted over to the center a little bit on many issues, and he's going to need to appeal to that far left base. So I think he's going to try. I do not think that this stuff will go through as a result of ClimateGate and so many things that have happened. I think people are well aware that the science is not quite science in many cases. And
David, saying the science is unsettled here is much like saying evolution is unsettled science. It's like saying the Earth is round.
That is not true.
Yes, it is.
And look, President Obama has already tried. The state of Alaska is considering suing the Obama administration.
Oh, I'm sorry. The people that brought us Sarah Palin.
Put aside that will endanger millions of dollars in hopes of not endangering the polar bear.
Well, John Fund, we have seen a little bit of negotiation here, at least as far as taxes go. I mean, we were expecting taxes on the top rate to be raised. He was going to stick to his guns on that. He didn't. He collapsed on that one, compromised with Republicans. Will he collapse on this issue, cap and trade?
No, because it's less visible, and as Chris says, I think he has to satisfy his liberal base. The problem is he's acting at cross purposes. On the one hand, he extends the tax cuts, recognizing that they are needed to improve the economy. On the other hand, one of the reasons we're not creating jobs right now is the economic uncertainty out there. These kind of EPA rules, arbitrary and capricious as they are, as long as they're not settled, as long as businesses think they might come into place, they will inhibit job creation and they will slow down this economic
Chris,
recovery.
have you done any research into how exactly these new Environmental Protection Agency regs are going to affect businesses in the U.S.?
Yeah, just like they did in Europe. And in Europe, they exported manufacturing jobs, like steel jobs, to exotic places like Carroll County, Kentucky. And that's going to happen here. It's not uncertainty. There's been an effective construction permatorium or moratorium now, effectively. We're not building new electricity generation capacity. We're only installing windmills. That's a strategic and defense issue as well, by the way. You've got business saying, look, I can just go to Mexico, South Korea, Indonesia, Brazil. The vast majority of the world rejects this. China, of course. They've sent jobs away from Europe, and that is precisely what we should expect here.
And Julie, I may disagree with my friend from the Wall Street Journal a little bit, with John Fund on this. I think if, in fact, the president gets significant pushback, as cap and trade did, he will bend. He is bending a little to pressure. And if jobs are at risk here, as Chris Horner said, if jobs are put at risk, as we've seen happen in Europe because of these green jobs, he may bend and pull back on these EPA regs.
Do you know who the leader of creation of green jobs is? China. China is leading the world in creation of green jobs. We should be the ones doing that. We should be the ones investing in this technology.
Okay,
Julie,
but
China's also the biggest cheater on
answer the point for a second.
They cheat all the time.
If it is proved, what Chris is saying, that it costs Americans jobs as a result of some of this regulation, would the president pull back?
I think he will make the argument, as he rightfully should, that of course this creates jobs. It doesn't cause jobs.
Well, it certainly costs jobs in Spain.
Scotland has invested
in China.
billions of dollars
jobs in China.
on wind power. You know what happened in this winter? The wind power basically petered out. They froze the machinery. Scotland has now turned to French nuclear power to bring in the needed electricity to warm their houses.
Jedediah, if he's for jobs, if he is for becoming energy sufficient in the United States, then perhaps he's going to have to push nukes.
He should bend on this, but I don't think he will. I think that because he gave in on the tax deal, I think he's going to try to. Remember, this is not just about what it's going to do for the economy. He wants to get reelected, and he's going to need that base.
By the way, Chris, final word. Is it true that China's pushing these green jobs?
China is installing windmills because Europe is paying them to. They're just not hooking them up to the grid because that wasn't required and it's too expensive, and the things don't turn all the time anyway.
They cheat.
Well, yeah, they also cheat. But look, you can mandate we get electricity from running on giant hamster wheels, and we'll create jobs in the giant hamster wheel industry. But you'll lose manufacturing jobs, real jobs.
We'll
you
all
can
be
make
crying
windmills
when
out of
China
steel,
starts
but you're not going to make
importing
steel
things
using windmills.
All right, Gary. Thank you very much.
China's installing more of every energy source than us except windmills. Okay?
Thank you, Chris Horner. Coming up on deck, once you're done digging out